13 minutes behind, no? Live.
Good night to the Belizean public at home and abroad. Tonight we're sitting on the 32nd edition of Belizean Affair. Sitting with me virtually is my usual co-host, Mr. Rudy Wade, Mr. Leonard Brackett, and attorney at law, Miss Sharon Pitts. With that said, I will go to Mr. Wade for reading, after which a pair will be mentioned and they will introduce themselves. I myself, chairman for tonight, Mr. Gregory Brackett.
Who will do the
Mr.
prayer?
Wade,
Mr. Wade and do the prayer for us tonight?
Oh,
Maybe,
okay.
Mr. Wade, you could do the prayer for us tonight too, sir?
Okay.
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 Yes.
Pleasant good night to our viewers, listeners, both at home and abroad. And it's always a pleasure to be in the company of these distinguished ladies and gentlemen. So, on that note, we always, start our program with a word. So I'll continue Matthew 11, 1 to 10 says, when Jesus had finished instructing his disciples, he went on from there to reach and preach in their cities. Now, when John heard in prison about the deed of Christ, he sent word by his disciple and said to him, are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another? And Jesus answered them, go and tell John that you hear and see what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news, and the poor have good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who is not offended by me. As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, these those who wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. That's my reading from Matthew tonight. And as usual, we offer a prayer for, you know, the beginning of our first show. Divine Heavenly Father, we give thanks and praise to you for this day because, as we all know, that tomorrow is not promised to no one.
Mhm.
Lord God Almighty, please continue to give us the wisdom, the understanding, the
Amen.
fortitude, the strength,
Amen.
and the courage to do what we do.
Amen.
Because, Lord God, like the saying says, um, a lot of people has their own agenda and their own personality and their own comprehension, and that we cannot take away from them. But please give us the wisdom and the strength and the courage to do right and say right by our people
Amen.
and our nation. In Jesus' name, Lord God, please bless this country, Belize, as we are in the hurricane season, Lord God, as there is a lot that's going on in our country, and many hasn't recovered from the last hurricane, Lord God. So please, God, we give, let's give thanks and praise, and the ones that are still waiting to get the aid, that you bless this country, bless Belize, so that we do not have another disaster. In
Amen.
Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. I thank you for your prayer and your reading. With that said, I will go for introductory to Mr. Brackett, followed by Ms. Pitts.
Good evening. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'm one of the regular panelists on the show. I'm glad to be available tonight to participate among these distinguished individuals. I would say the distinguished and honorable Miss Sharon Pitts, as well as my honorable and distinguished cousin himself, and the venerable and distinguished Mr. Roody Wade. I'm grateful for the privilege to sit beside these individuals to advocate on behalf of our country's well-being. Tonight's show is Belizean's Affairs Show number 32 of Monday, 28th of August, 2023. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope we say something that may be of some public benefit. Thank you, and God bless Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad.
Good night, hailing from Belize, on the mainland in Belize City. And I'm hoping I'm not like the Christmas visitor who overstay welcome. I'm a guest, and thanks for not turning up the broom yet. But it's a privilege to be able to have this conversation, and as well, it's a listening opportunity and a learning experience for me to be able to participate as a guest once more. And sometimes I don't take the time out to say it, but greetings and goodwill to Belizeans at home and abroad, and others who have the interests of Belize at heart. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I be given a couple seconds of your time?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say something in the presence of Ms. Pitts as she's here right
Go
now.
ahead.
On behalf of you, Mr. Chairman, and on behalf of Mr. Wade and myself, we'd like to ask our distinguished special guest if she would accept our proposition to classify her instead of as just a special guest or as a guest, but as one of our regular panelists. Of course, she doesn't have to show up when she's not able to, because we have to remember that she has other priorities that deals with legal cases and things that deals with other clients whose time may not necessarily work out with ours, right? But as long as you're willing to show up, Ms. Pitts, you're welcome to this forum. We'll always be sending you the links, and consider yourself here and out. I'm speaking on behalf of the chairman and also Mr. Wade. I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, but just by virtue of expressing to you that as of today forward, you're an honorable, not honorary. We don't want to cheap shot you. You're an honorable panelist of this
Amen.
group.
Amen.
Thank you very much, and wish you the best, and God bless.
God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding.
I thank you, Mr. Brackett, to you, Mr. Wade, with a complimentary welcome to Ms. Pitts.
Well, it's always a pleasure, from the very first day Miss Pitts, accept our, invitation. I have always seen her as a regular guest, as a panelist, not like the other way around. But then it's a pleasure, my people at home and abroad, from the heart, I welcome Miss Spitz. You know, she bring to this table a vast. We could learn a lot from her. She what I like about Miss Spitz, you know, in my view, that she is a Belizean at heart, and she have people and nation at heart. She have the Belizean people at heart,
Amen.
nation at heart, and that's what I admire about her. You know, I have always been a strong advocate for, you know, for my women, you know, both, you know, across this nation and around the world. You know, I advocate for my woman. You know, I welcome her, and it's a pleasure to sit with her and also with you guys always. You know, and sorry that I had was to, you know, desert you guys on Friday, but you know, my apology, and I'm sorry I won't do it again. I will ask your permission before I do it. Anyway, that's, you know, it's nice to be here, guys. Again, informing the public, you know, bringing truth to the nation, you know, as we see it, you know. So
Uh,
thank you, Miss Spitz.
Yes,
Back
you're
to
welcome.
you,
thank
Miss
you,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Um, I did not ask before the show started, which I should have taken part of the chance to do. But in the particular subject of the economy of Belize, as we're going to address, as you mentioned earlier, I'd like if you would permit me after you introduce the topic and set the pace for the show. I'd like to beg the indulgence of yourself and the rest of the panelists and our listeners that if you can let me read part of that same thing I told you I had been discussing with the other party, the other individual, no? Because it's germane as a means of trying to provide some context, and it's already in written form. So I just wanted to read a part of that so people can get a sense of it and maybe go back and check it out because I'll repost it again, no? But I'm just querying as to the possibility. I know you have the program set, and I didn't want to just at the last minute come in and try to bring that up, no?
There is always room for Adan when it has to do with educating the public,
Thank you very much, sir.
as long as it has to do with the economy and the well-being of this country. With that said, Mr. Spitz, I welcome you on board. You are no
Thank you.
stranger to me, and it is with great pleasure I'm proud to sit beside you virtually. Um, you bring to this table a lot of legal background. I used to be with one of your alma mater and Mr. Hubert. I've learned a lot from him, and we have had people who had said to us that the things we were discussing on this show, Belizean Affair,
Yes.
we are not of any quality or caliber with legal background, even though we challenged them and had an open floor for them to sit and debate with us. But with that said, I'm glad you're here. And of course, with legal background and with the love for our country, we can more than adequately address the issues of our country via this platform, Belizean Affairs. I thank you very much.
Now we have many other activities out there, and I feel that, we step up and interest us to be able to believe that my perspective where it helps, and I
Uh,
learn from people. I call it law in society, the
I think
sociology of
the
law.
Spitz camera is fused.
My camera.
Uh-huh. I think
Let
your
me try
camera.
something,
I don't,
please.
yeah. Wait. There were two of you. I don't know. Come back again. Uh,
I'm trying.
Redo what you did just now. I,
Okay,
I'm
I'm
not sure.
reloading.
Okay, go
I
ahead
don't
then.
know if that is good.
Go ahead.
And
Go ahead.
then,
That's all right.
okay,
I'm gonna share it up.
re-entering the studio.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's great. That will help because
But I'm only.
your picture was frozen just now, and we were hearing you talking, but we weren't seeing you
Are you seeing me
articulating.
now?
No.
Not yet.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Right now. Right now. Uh, okay.
okay, great.
I'll just take out the.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, again, what a nice background we have behind us. The Great Barrier Reef of Belize, along with our little flag. I had to do a little input. That is how important this show is. But let me start by saying this tonight. As I look on the world news and on social media, we see what is happening in Niger in Africa. There was a coup and the Africans decided that they no more wants to be under the rule of the white man. And we are finding that all over the world we are starting to run into this kind of issue. As you can see, the farming of the bricks, and we have countries which are neighboring to us who are also looking to join them. Now, my concern is the selling of oil by Saudi Arabia and Iran, who is using the petrodollars, which is backed by the United States. Now, why be concerned? Because if they becomes a part of the BRICS and they start to use the new currency, the American currency will lose its value. And most individual who has long-term savings and teachers, every individual there, their assets will fall. Not to forget that just recently, as a part of our government conversation in wanting to change Belize into a republic, they mentioned that changing the Kong of the currency would not devalue it because it's pegged to the American currency. But here we find that we are in a scenario where, as we say in Belize, any number can roll from the dice. And firstly, let me hear what Ms. Spitz has to say on this.
Well, I like to reach back in history, no? I am not that familiar of the geopolitics of oil, but it seems to me that we had time when dollar we were pound currency as per the British, and then we moved from that to being tied with the dollar and a fixed rate of 2 to 1. So basically, it seems that whichever currency we're tied to, what happens in the nation of that currency, or more the world of that currency, and my impression is that the US dollar is the most valued and what you call it, dollar currency in the world in terms of trading. The thing is that currency or banknotes are presented for value, and then you have the substratum. Some countries have it that they might have gold reserves. From what you mentioned, Mr. Greg Brackett, I take it you're pointing to the reality that a lot of times we see fluctuation in the day-to-day trading value of major currencies in the world, whether the pound, the sterling, the US currency, the currencies of the East and West, North, South, and so on. For Belize, we had the time, I think it was 1949, and permit me, I like to put a little colloquial, maybe to plug in, when I can't say where the dollar will be plugged, but a little bit of the anecdotal history to keep it live for people. And my quiz would be, what was the Creole song when the dollar was devalued? And I believe it was 1949, they, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brackett, the then governor promised the people of British Honduras that the dollar would not be devalued.
That is
And there
correct.
was a dance the weekend. And then the Monday morning, people woke up to the news. I guess they must have posted it and they put it somewhere on the radio. But the Creole song also came out, and you know what it was? Bring on number one, bring on number two, bring on number one, bring on number two. The dollar, the governor devalued the dollar, and father devalued the dance. I can tell you that another time. But in all seriousness, it seems to me that the U.S. is very smart, just like it has a lot of wilderness wealth, what Samuel Haynes would have called the wealth untold, land that is priceless. It has its reserves of oil and so on, right? Now, what you have is that in the world, and I am going more from maybe an exposure, and I might be much, much outdated, maybe a decade or two outdated. But some 2 decades ago, I was hearing of, you have your gross domestic product, which is in a sense, a standard international and tradition of how the wealth of a nation might be evaluated or presented, your gross domestic product based on what you produce and so on. Interestingly enough, you also have, there was a school of thought that was outmoded. And what you had with the North South is that you have certain countries like Brazil, and I don't remember who North, but you might have the G8, and then you have some other realities in terms of trade. In short, you have environmental economics or green accounting or green GDP, which would say that when you value a country's value, you look to that the traditional GDP tends to externalize or doesn't take into account your real wealth in terms of your environment and your natural resources. And I think that would mean bio and geo resources, and as well externalize maybe the your people, so the humanity. Now, for example, I was having a conversation, a little chook mouth, not so long ago, where, we have people who come to invest in Belize and they would say, okay, the stakeholders and these people are investing big money and so on. And, it's like, remember I was saying last week, we keep the try and matriculate with people to poverty. Well, we keep undervaluing ourselves. And even apart from carbon credits and so on, blah, 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 what we have is like, when you talk about, say, remember I was saying airport, seaport, land port, these are patrimony, national security interests, and open-ended revenue earners. Skip to your barrier reef. I was telling somebody just today when I contributed a consultancy long, long ago, and I think it was shelved, I was saying that we have geoprospecting and bioprospecting. But if you look at, say, the barrier reef with 7 individually inscribed world sites ongoing biological processes. And I don't want to say much because, I know nobody from outside can raid. When I say that we have to know what we protect and we're in an information era. So that there was a notion and a push and a school of thought long ago that certain countries which might have rich mineral resources, and in Belize's case, I would say apart from our unnatural wealth, the wealth untold, we have quality of life. So you see how people are bottling water and selling water. When that started 25 years ago, that was alien to us. Somebody who didn't do 1 year in high school said to me some years ago, Miss Spitz, I might start to sell bottle oxygen soon, and song far-fetched. Long story short though, I think Britain started with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. And they were having their
South Africa.
South Africa rather, not South America. Brazil is a South American country, right? India, the
mm,
middle, the eastern, but in a sense, more this side, no, but still, in you see, in terms of say even Commonwealth, we are linked with India, but now you have with trade, you have these major countries, which large population, large manufacturing. We saw that last week. India landed in the 60s, President Kennedy spoke about a revolution to the moon, and the US won that race. We
mm,
see now India just landed as a technological and it's a pharmaceutical giant as well. And India has a lot of, and I say they're up there, no? And they were trained by the British even while they were under the British. So you have to see that as a big quotient. So now, apart from that block, you have some others which will be invited to come on, and most notably Africa. Now, I'll say this quickly. Somebody sent me a copy of a bit of the text of the speech that was it Prime Minister Xi Jinping or whatever the proper name is of China. And when I was reading, it was like this person is a humanitarian. This person is a world leader. This person might be somebody's example to follow. And then I came to my senses and I sent back the person as a rule of law country, a constitutional person. I sent back something to say, well, what about God? What about freedom of speech? What about freedom of movement? And so on. And the
mm,
person sent me back a text to say, well, in this international world made up of so many countries, something to that effect, we must take the middle ground. And I almost said, okay, left that alone because I was in the middle of, matters that I had to attend to. But it was so much so that I sent back and I said, well, when it comes to God and rule of law, freedom of speech, there's no middle ground. There
mm,
is no middle ground. When you lose God in what you're doing, you lose everything, right? You'd be serving mammon or mammon. I don't know what the proper
yeah,
religious word is. But we still have to take our meter. And with this will be another way that we will have to say, you know what? Who do we piggyback on? Who do we follow? We have a friendly neighbor, Mexico, to the north, which although we are generally in this area considered third world, Mexico, in terms of manufacturing and so on, the world's billionaire. I don't know if it's still Carlos Slim. So Mexico is a trade in country and manufacturing behemoth to be contended with. It's also a friendly neighbor to the north. So then we have further north of United States of Mexico, United States of America. In terms of talent and brain banking and a home, if I was not to live in Belize, I would pick a rule of law country or one where isn't the US amazing? Whatever you say about the US, right? Look at how they treat handicapped people. Isn't it one country you can go to and you have the freedom of speech and other things, and you can aspire to and achieve an American dream? So that I would say that for Belize, I'm not saying we're there yet, but we cannot be hopscotching around. I think, again, it's something where we have to really look on. I don't know, maybe I am behind, I don't know enough. I will have to lend my ears and try to figure out, watch and see. But it seems to me right now that we will have to go with our history and heritage and tradition. And we will have to look to who our diplomatic friends have been. We have the Caribbean, we have the CARICOM. Another thing is that some years ago, decades ago, our leaders were going to world conferences and coming back and saying, you know what? If you don't globalize, you'll be like the dinosaur and die. Just today, I was telling somebody, 20 years ago, when I was mentioning niche markets and, you know, fair trade and so on, I think somebody editorialized that, it's corn that. But I gave the example again today that with fair trade, you look at how Orange Walk, designated as its own fair trade products, right? That has been my dream for Belize, where somebody markets one piece of handicraft or something that's unique to Belize, they get honest value. So it's not the economies of scale. You have to watch China as well. China is an ideologically closed country, and it's anathema to our system. We have had people from government going to China, and we have a diplomatic tie with Taiwan. Now, a dilemma might be for us. China is one of the big fives in the United Nations, but then we have our rule of law, and we have the United Nations as the strongest international forum. It begs the question, what will emerge as BRICS start to expand? But do we jump on the wagon train, or do we again batten down and look on and so on, right? And we will have to do what is good for Belize, but we will have to have a kind of uncommon foresight and hindsight and intuition, and it will be what will hold our people together, but not just in terms of, definitely nobody wants devaluation by way of
Uh,
formal
could I
devaluation.
could
I don't
I
even like to say that word, but when you have people buying bananas and three oranges for $1, the three oranges for $1 at the market, I'm not saying bananas cost that. Whereas 4 years ago, you could get a sack of orange for $10, and the other basic necessities aren't there. You're having some kind of, so call it what you want,
well,
hyperinflation, whatever, whatever. But the thing is
Sharon?
that a lot
Sharon?
of our people have monies in the bank and so on, no?
Sharon?
So I remember back in the 80s
Sharon?
or sometime, you remember when what happened to Mexico? I
Sharon?
finished right now.
Yeah.
But certain attorney that I knew had advised a client do his contract in US dollars. The man said, no, the Mexican currency now and drop. And then he made a wail and cry shortly after, right? So we have to watch these things as real things, and we will have to look at what is our paradigm, but as well, will we be better off? We maintain, and the US has a way of holding on to itself, right? You have great entrepreneurship. I think when it comes to business savvy and trade and so on, right? And the US is full of resources, geo and bio. So I would say that, and the other thing is people love American
Sharon?
culture and of
Sharon?
fashion,
I'm
just about
I'm
everything,
gonna
right?
contribute to a thought on
Whatever
some of
they
the
say
things
of
that you were saying
America,
before.
they admire the American culture. I don't like certain Western values, like I like
Sharon?
traditional family, etc., etc., etc. So I don't accept certain foreign agenda. But when it comes to some other things, sorry to take so long. I leave the
That's all
rest
right.
of
No,
time. No,
I wanted us to contribute a thought to something that you were saying, but then uh, I don't know if I go back now if I make the same context, So I'd rather just leave it alone. But I want to contribute something to what you were saying, like add on, right, or expand.
Well,
But it's all
well
right. I'll just
said,
take my turn.
well said, Miss Fitz. With that said, very informative. I have did research, I have did studies, and I find that there's only two republic in the world that is really making it, which is Argentina and the United States. Every other republic has some issues and cannot seems to move forward. But let me go to Mr. Wade and hear what he has to say.
As you know, I have said a little while back about the direction that I have seen the this PUP administration is taking in terms of want to reform the constitution or tampering with the constitution. I have stated that um, I personally sees nothing wrong with constitution, and I've also said that I have observed that the way this administration is doing it is all wrong. And I've said that it seems that they want to turn Belize into a republic. I've said that over a year ago, right? The way they were going. And you see, it confirms, in my view, more that that's the way this PUP administration want to take Belize. It confirms to me that the other day about the questionnaire that you are supposed to fill out, on item number 12, as you mentioned, Greg, is that what the people think about getting rid of the governor general and replace it with a president. So all that in back of my head confirm that these people are hell bent in whatever they have concocted, sat in some little room with their super majority and concocted this concoction, right? And now they're shoving it down the people's throat, right? I have said about the money, talked about it before. Yeah, well, some people say, well, don't worry about the money; it will be alive and strong. For me, it's all bull crap, right? Because who has the Belize dollar strong? You ask the standard 5 or standard 6 kid, and they will tell you,
The Prime Minister.
right? Our money is strong because of the British, right?
So,
Some might not see it that way, or some might want to get away from that. That's their prerogative, right? But as for me, you know, if if and when these people fulfill their agenda in turning Belize into a republic, I hope and pray that if it's the Shine guy, he has the whole of Belize, right? And I hope and pray if it's the Briceño administration, that they have the whole of Belize, because these fools tends to forget that we have the ICJ yet to contend with. See, it seems that they already know what these judges will know, how they will rule. They seem that they know all that. Although he's beating the number one man that is representing Belize, this Mr. Briceño, right?
Respect.
That attorney that is representing Belize. And I'm not going to get into that, because public have different feelings about different things, right? But in my view, this guy, our prime minister of this country, do not have a clue what he's getting into. And he hasn't followed this thing all the way through to the end result, right? So this is just a warning to him. He better be very careful what he's wishing for, right? And as far as the money, Greg, Miss Pitts had mentioned a lot. You had mentioned a lot. As far as the money, in my view, if Belize becomes a republic, the money is going to be the value, right? Unless if Mr. Briceño could show me different, right? So that's where I stand with that. And like I always say, to each his own. If 20% of the Belizean populace is okay for having Belize as a republic, well, that's fine, because they are the one that has to live with it, not me. I mean, I have to live with it too, but that's not what I want for my country, and that's me. And I hope that I have the majority in this country, both at home and abroad, that does not want Belize to become a republic. We are okay the way we are. We are governed with a good system. It's just that the people who are in charge of the system is not doing a good job, past and present. So until then, we are doomed. But like I say, right? This administration right now has to be very careful what they are getting into. and I want to sound this alarm because they have forgotten the ICJ, right? They have forgotten. So the Republic might be only Corozal and Orange Walk if the ICJ rules in half of Belize or whatever Guatemala want, because I'm telling you guys, my people at home and abroad, we do not know what Guatemala is taking us to court for. We do not know. I do not know. They could have a court paper there say they want whole of Belize, half of Belize, quarter of Belize. That's a trickery. They haven't have the guts or they haven't have the guts to come on to the Belizean people and say this is what Guatemala is taking us to court for X, Y, and Z, right? That's the same way they're doing with this reforming of the constitution. They could never come to the people with the truth. They have a problem with telling the people the truth, right? So through this medium, we're calling them out, come clean to the people, man. Leave it by leave it, come clean to the people, right? And I'm sorry for the Belize dollars, the Belize dollar if Belize becomes a republic. That's my view. And that's my take on that, guys. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Very informative, Mr. Wade. But let me contribute to that for you, because a lot have been said about disrespect in the house and disrespect towards female, and still we have a prime minister who is very disrespectful himself, but nothing is being said. Imagine our prime minister in the UK wanting the prime minister over there to apologize to him for slavery. Imagine our prime minister throwing our legal representation under the bus, who is supposed to represent us at the ICJ, because he does not answer to what they wanted to hear from a legal opinion. And imagine 8 lawyers in the House and the present government, 8 attorneys who cannot understand what a legal opinion means. Mr. Brackett, I would like to hear from you and your reading as a contribution. And before I go there, of utmost importance, and the devaluation of our currency, if we turn republic, every economist and every educated individual knows that the great United States of America has what they call a Fort Knox to back their dollar. At one time, their currency was being overprinted and they had an issue. They have rebound. Every country in the world needs to have financial backing for their currency, either from their resources or in precious gem or in gold. With that said, let me hear from you, Mr. Brackett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Wade, for your contribution as well, and thank you very much, Sharon, for your contribution too. I think together we make a stronger team. The question is, what is the effect of Belize dollar in terms of Belize changing from its present alignment to the American dollar, with its Belize dollar being pegged at 2 for 1 American, and with the prospects of getting aligned with the BRICS and all the associated other members that are running to try and join the BRICS. What is the benefit for Belize? And why shouldn't we participate in that process? That is, to abandon the US dollar, which is 2 for 1 right now, in favor of something that we don't have any idea what it's going to be like or what it's going to be if and when our money gets pegged to some other foreign currency. I would like someone, especially in the group of people whose mindset is that we should break up our present association in favor of some other alternative association. I would like for them to explain the details of what is the benefits, by what measure, what is the rate of exchange for our dollar, and how better off would we be if we trade with those other people compared to the trading that we're doing right now. Now, economically wise, as I stipulated on a previous conversation with another gentleman, he was espousing the very thought that Belize needs to look after its own interests and probably think about joining up with the BRICS. Now, the person was saying that the Belize dollar is pegged 2 for 1 with the American dollar, and therefore when the American dollar keeps devaluating because of the BRICS and all the other, like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Argentina, and all the other new members that are being added to BRICS, or who are hoping to become members of BRICS, and some of the other Central American countries who have voted to disband their allegiance or association with Taiwan in favor of mainland China most recently, which is what I was saying before, that our present government was trying to get Belize to do. And apparently, for whatever the reason, they were not able to do it quick enough so that they could have joined these other Central American countries to make their statement when they made it recently. The bottom line is that the economy of, as I pointed out to the gentleman when we mentioned about the dollar or Belize dollar being pegged to the American dollar, I pointed out to him that we only have about $500 million worth of credit or reserves to back our currency. So Belize, for all intents and purposes, is insignificant in terms of the American economy and what damage we could do to America, or what benefits we can bring to other countries in terms of our economy. Our economy is about a little over, we'll say, $4 billion per year. We have American people here that own that much money in their pocket. So for all intents and purposes, the economy of America is of $24 trillion per year. Not $24 million, not 2,400, not 24,000, 24 billion or 2,400 billion, $24 trillion. What impact does Belize have on American economy? Little to none. The American economy is, in addition to the G14, is far superior and much bigger than the BRICS economy. China's economy, if you add them all up, China's economy is about $16, $17 trillion. India is probably about $8 trillion. It's growing fast. Japan is probably about 12 trillion. South Africa is probably about 2 or 3 trillion. Egypt is a few hundred billion. Saudi Arabia is probably about 5, 6 trillion. But if you add up all these other countries, you add up the countries in Europe, France, Italy, Britain, Germany, and all the others together, when you put them all together, there are probably another $40 trillion. So you take America, $40 trillion plus the American 24 trillion, that's about 60 70 trillion dollars almost already. And that you haven't taken into consideration South Korea, you haven't added on Japan, you know. You're talking about close to $100 trillion for the Western alliances by themselves. And the other $40 to $50 trillion for the BRICS and the others who associate with them. So there's like still 50% below. But because they're growing so rapidly and they're associating so rapidly, and by them doing that, they're taking away Americans' economic, or basically they're preying on the economic pie that America used to have onto itself. It's now being taken on by other people. That becomes a threat that some people are getting scared of. And the latest statistic says that it will take until 2050 before the BRICS and all the other members that would or could join up with them ever become comparable to the G7 and others. So what is this scare about between now and 1950, so many years? Huh?
You have
A good 27 years, right?
a viewer says an excellent description there, Leonard, of why China economy will collapse soon. Please understand why this affects our country in more than one ways.
Very much so.
That's
China's
what
economy is on the verge of
that's
collapsing.
one of our
It
viewers
has been
just
growing rapidly over
said
the
that.
last 20 years, 30 years. But because
Thank
they
you.
jumped too quick and showed their hands in the poker game about what they wanted to do to America, who was actually their financiers, who brought them out of the economic doldrum that they were in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, to the preeminence that they now have, to the point where they got so big-headed and wanted to challenge America. And America will not stand by the wayside and have that happen. The American economy is not going to cede the economic supremacy to China or any other country. If they have to undermine it by whatever means, they will. As a matter of fact, that's what's happening to China right now. A lot of money is leaving China, coming back to America and to Europe and other places. And the Chinese are having to scrape the bottom of the barrel right now in order for them to keep the successes that they have been having alive. They are used to 6% and 7% growth. The most recent statistics is that they have about 2.5 at the most, and depleting or getting less and less, because the Americans are now reverting back to bringing back their industries here, and China is not in a position to be able to sustain what they had before. But the bottom line is, as I'm saying, we are running after something that we have no control over, no influence in. It's a big boys game, and we don't play any part in it. With $500 million reserved, how can we impact nations that are talking about hundreds of billions and many multiples of trillions? I'm not saying that we are not part of the economy of the world, as the gentleman that I was having the discussion with was presuming that I am saying that we are not part of we are a part of the economy of the world. But to what extent? And what amount of impact do we have? What is the purpose of changing our geopolitical alliances right now in favor of probably China giving us a few billion dollars quickly? Because China can afford to buy us over right now, can pay for all of our debts and put us in a good economic standing right now, just in order to get influence in Belize under North America's chin or belly or whatever you want to call it. The same thing they're doing with Cuba right now. China is trying to recruit Cuba as the Russians did in the 60s. And the outcome will be one and the same. The problem is that we, Belize, for example, are getting into big boys game and are talking ourselves into a corner where we will leave what we have, like the dog that walks across the bridge with the bone in our mouth, see the reflection of the bone, and figure that you want to go out of that bigger bone because the reflection was bigger than the bone that he had in his mouth. And that's basically what Belize is about to do. For a few of our politicians, them to get a few dollars out of China and other places, and then switch allegiance, as the Central American countries are now doing, switching their allegiance from Taiwan to mainland China. We are getting involved in a game that is much bigger than us, in which we have no real influence or real part to play. But yet, we people want to get bamboozled into believing that we have some suasion, some capacity to influence, or some moral standings or capability, even as geopolitically, to offer China safe harbor in our country. Do they not understand what Guatemala is or what Guatemala represents to Belize? Guatemala have 30 times we population, and their economy is far surpassing what we could ever dream of. And it's all been supported and sponsored by the United States of America. Do you think that the United States of America, under the Webster proposal and the heads of agreement and all the other discussions, the Weicker-Rumfeld proposals, and all the other things that came towards Belize, do you think that America would have us snub our nose at them and try to invite the Chinese to come into Fui territory and not let the Guatemalans take over Fui territory to avoid that? When did we become so dotish or incapable of rationalizing reality? We don't have to be great geopolitical minded people. When have we lost our bearings to such an extent where we are the ones on the edge of the knife and we can act so indifferent to reality, all because of a few extra dollars that we think we will get out of somebody else? So when I sell the birthright, then we went back to the Bible, the olden days of the Bible. We have learned nothing from then till now. Sell the birthright, sell the patrimony to the highest bidder. I had something that I needed to read, and I'll just wait to see if there's any more time left afterwards, and I'll tackle that. But for right now, I'd like to yield back the floors because I don't want to be monopolizing and have other people waiting too long for a second turn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you, Mr. Brackett. At this time, I'm getting some heavy rain, but let me say this. Ms. Pitts, I want to go to you.
Yes, Shani,
The last
I'm not
time
hearing
we,
too well. Please,
the last time we were on,
please
we had
increase the
this
mic.
discussion about the taking over of property from City Council. Just recently in the news, we find that a young man was killed who had out a videotape, and in that tape was mentioned about land fraud taking place again in the lands department with several, not one individual, and all this land scheme that is going on. I brought back this topic tonight because the last time we were dealing with it, you did not get a chance to finish. And as part of that edition we was mentioning to people the legal remedy that can be used, or the legal remedy that must be done before government can take possession of your property. So with that said, Ms. Pitts, let me hear from you.
Okay, the mic on your side, Mr. Chairman and other gentlemen, I have to really, I don't know if it's rain, but I'm not hearing as well, but I heard like most of it because I concentrated real well.
I
Just
thank you.
before,
The rain is coming down hard,
yes.
so
So
have me an
I think
excuse.
from Mr. Brackett Leonard, I don't know if any of you can turn up your mic or if it's just my side. It might be
That's
the
what I'm about to do, but I hope
challenge with the.
just I don't want to turn up too loud. No, I'm going to turn it up some more.
Yes, please.
Mines.
I just wanted to say before
Okay.
I go into the matter of the property, if you allow me 1 minute or
Okay.
20 seconds, please, Mr.
Man gone up.
Chairman, that having listened to what you been a part of, what you were mentioning with bricks. My the view that I'm seeing coming out of this is that it looked like we have people playing economics instead of economics, right? And they're playing a dangerous game. And we can't just follow foot, or we might go into a if we think bricks is a free for all, we might go into an economic free fall.
Exactly.
And one other thing came to mind is that when you look at China, the sheer magnitude, and it's a friend who warned me of this, so the caveat is the sheer magnitude of their population against their resources. One thing I could say with the US, you have disclosure, you could claim disclosure. Will we be satisfied to be getting plastic rice
Oh, shucks.
for 1 cent
Wow.
a pound? Or do we prefer to buy real rice or produce real rice for 2 cents a pound? So the cost of your health and so on cannot be externalized. So with China, we might be scratching the belly of the beast, and when that beast come out away, we're looking at that. Then another thing that one might have to wonder too with the, I don't know what is Central America looking to do, but remember El Salvador, right? They have people bowing over El Salvador with how it handled crime and blah, blah, blah. But El Salvador was going through with another, I think if I remember rightly, wasn't El Salvador bold enough to say it would adopt Bitcoin or some kind of cyber coin or
They,
currency
they did.
as its
They
official
did.
currency?
They did.
Isn't that a warning and a reminder that that is right there? And it might sound like we know the talk go buy the new Belfoot pants where they in or something. This is not games, people. Listen about, I don't want to get into it. I think I say enough, right? With respect to the matter of property, when we look at the Constitution, it's section 17. It has a provision against unlawful deprivation of property.
Mm-hmm.
And if you allow me, what section is that? Did I say 17? Yes. Aye, aye, aye. So you still have, that the difference with us as a country and these other countries with the constitution again is that in these countries where they rule by decree, you might have heard people know of multinationals and corporate and the citizen and natural and investor foreign saying, you know what, there has been a nationalization of something. There was this coup, there was this change of government or administration and a rule by decree, whereby they wake up one day and all property declared nationalized and no real matter as to compensation because guess what? They related back that you know what the people are lawfully deprived anyway and the country and you go home and you don't even get time to pick up your marbles and run, so to speak. So in section 17, we have no property of any description shall be compulsory taken possession of and no interest in or right over property of any description shall be compulsorily,
Acquired.
compulsorily acquired except by or under a law that one A, sorry,
Provides for.
subsection A of that subsection 1 prescribes principles on which the manner in which reasonable compensation therefore is to be determined and given within a reasonable time. So we had some of those cases we referred to in the past, and there was a famous case, I think it was the Santa
Boeing.
Fe Court Association case, which said that basically compensation can just be at the whim of the uh, government taking or acquiring. It must be at market value. And more importantly, or equally important, and perhaps you'll say the first thing is that government can't just already acquire this property for a public purpose and stated, the court is able to look behind and make a determination whether in fact that is a true public purpose.
Mhm.
Subsection B goes back to the rule of law and the court and not who's in the jurisdiction. It says secures any person claiming an interest in or over the property a right of access
To
to
the
the
court,
court for the purpose of one,
establishing his in
small
court.
italics, I think you call that, establishing his rights, his interest or right, if any. Two, determining whether that taking of possession or acquisition was duly carried out for a public purpose. Remember, I mentioned that case in accordance with the law authorizing the taking of possession or acquisition. But remember, you have the land acquisition for public purpose statute or act, and that is the one that would be used by government, and that can be looked behind by the court and if an aggrieved party present himself before the court. And as well, you have these municipal uh, actions which can be looked behind if it is that some law is held up as though it's under the banner of that. And small italics 3, I'm going for this reason to do a running analysis, determining the amount of the compensation to which he may be entitled.
Mhm.
So the law should have principles prescribed and reasonable compensation and time, so it must be tenuous. 4, enforcing his right to any such compensation. Then we go to subsection 2. Nothing in this section shall invalidate any law by reason only that it provides for the taking possession of any property or the acquisition of any interest in or right over property. And we have to cross read as well, apart from common law interpretation. We have an interpretation act, and I printed one page so that we can look to what is property. Definitely, we have realty and personality, but you have a whole slew of subsets.
Mhm.
And then, forgive me, so I'll reread that. Nothing in this section shall invalidate. And I think when we were having presentation by the presenter on the Constitution and the what was held up as a quick explanation or example that although the law has the fundamentally protected right against unlawful deprivation of property, he was saying, well, the example would be you might have a law by which the municipality or city council can uh, take away property due to failure to pay tax. So that it says here, nothing shall invalidate any law in this section by reason only. And I underline by reason only twice, that it provides for the taking possession of any property or the acquisition of any interest in or right over property, A, in satisfaction of any tax, comma, rate, or due. Okay? So it has some other areas which would be allowing or seem to be exceptional. But you notice this said by reason only. And then I put my own little reminder note that one can still challenge the law as void on other reasons. This is saying by reason only. So then if you were to look and say it's a bias, you can go back to the earlier part and say that the law deprives you of your right to a determination or hearing or appeal before the court, or it operated in such a way that, let's say that the land is being sold for taxation, but the means of the sale was such that you can say, well, you know what? This was sold as a really, 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 and I am suggesting, I am willing to argue, gross undervaluation, or as such to be that it was really unconscientious, or there were certain um, mechanisms or facts within it as such as that this person ought to have, let's say, for example, it might have been published in a newspaper or a gazette, right? And you might say, well, the person had constructive notice because even if you didn't read his gazette, you know what? He had notice. It's notice to the world. Then what does the person do if faced with it? The person comes and, oh gosh, I just come to check my property, bill for my birthright, my leave piece of Belize, and that gone, 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 gone. So then you look behind it. Can you still go to a court and say, you know what? I want to look behind, have a review of that administrative action. You look to things like maybe statute of limitation and so on. Now, of course, when you deal with land, Crown, just like the Crown always reserves to itself the seashore, and that is whereby we would enjoy as members public of Belize the right to the seashore and the reserve. And elders generations ago, you know, your elders used to, without quoting law, say that a from reserve, that a you know, and I keep saying, and it's harsh, that we have people, especially in real estate, and people who have come here, and we have locals who are schooled in law, and others who are schooled in knowing what the rule of law is and the right of way and access by sheer virtue of being Belizeans and having grown up intergenerationally in this rule of law country. We don't have no such thing as private keys. We don't have no such thing as private beach. We don't have no such thing as fencing off. So that I said, like, I think I said already in Cayman, people say anecdotally, tourists say it. They say, well, if somebody was so foolhardy to build on fence off the Crown Reserve, and of course there's a formula from where you are, you know, high water, different things and so on. So there are formulae, but basically open the gate, walk over the land, open the living room, go through the kitchen, and if their bedroom, they can right away walk through it. I was saying at a seminar at Princess Hotel some years ago with some environmental lawyers, and certain Belizeans were saying this thing is up in the air. They are not sure there's a dilemma. And I said, no way. We were at Princess, and I said, guess what? If I have one client who comes to me and say that Princess Hotel was saying he was trespassing on in the front by the sea, I don't know if he can trespass on the sea. When a young man is running on our beach reserve, is that a threat to somebody? He might be breaching. Well, if it is that during COVID you should have been in at 9, was that young man running to try and get back to where he was saying by 9? But no hotelier, nobody has a right to stop him and treat him as though, whether profile or otherwise, as though he's on land that is not his. Then I will say something. My environmental law colleague from Cancun was saying that Cozumel area around that same time, they had people who were, you know, Mexicans and Costa Rica. I think that 300 meters or yards or feet for Costa Rica. Then Mexico one time, as a foreigner, you couldn't even own certain things on the beach. But when you had these mega hotels being built along the beach, what the Mexican environmentalists considered a win was they had to tackle it so that if a hotelier was to buy a certain stretch of land, take for example, we have the peninsula like Placencia Peninsula, right? And developers even are crass enough to consider certain things which are maybe Saint Bite and certain other areas as though those are Placencia, right? Not the peninsula, okay, is called the whole strip. But the point I'm making is that what you would have developers trying to do is that they get their go through permitting process, and they have these hotels stretched out longitudinally so that people literally can go in and access their beach, so they are fenced off. So to deal with that. Certain environmentalists tackle it, and it is that you have to put an easement every so often, so that, and as well they cut down on the size at that time at least of the hotels. So for us in Belize, we should be looking at our easements, which a developer comes along. You can't be just developing that. It can be somebody from tourist board. And look at and I'll call it out. Look at Key Chapel. That was from the Martyr Estate and bequeathed to people for Negro improvement, right? Now, when I was at sixth form, I went on a key trip, and I remember being on the beach. I never saw the law then, but I listened to old people. Somebody from the hotel, few of us students, we had we leave barbecue, we joined, we leave money for gas for the boat and so on. We had a trusted boatman driving us out there. And we light up, we leave barbecue, no let us smoke the butter, and we got somebody who came, and Belizean Centurion, warning us that the owner said we could not do a barbecue there. And I was very calm. Well, kindly ask him to come himself so we can explain to him this is a part of our beach. I didn't say patrimony. We have a right to be here. I was at in front of Jaguar Reef about 15, 20 years ago, after it was built, definitely. And again, we were on the beach picnicking, very quietly, a few of us. And somebody came to warn us that we can't be doing that. We must move because the hotel had a wedding that they were going to perform on the beach. I had two elders with me, and before I could say anything, they said, "This is a free beach." And we were saying to them, go and tell the hotel owner if he wants, we are people of courtesy. And if they want to ask us to use the beach or explain why we shouldn't be, and we know where the pegs are, then you need to come. And by the way, Jaguar Reef is in City River Village proper. I had somebody who was saying beaches and dreams and Jaguar Reef in Hopkins, and this person was, well, I work with a hotel, a Belizean, a young Belizean. And of course, dressing me down in front of people assembled for a social event. And I was able to say, well, you know what? Although you work with your boss and your boss so advertise, I happen to do a couple conveyances or deeds for people who are purchasing. And I'm sure even your boss's title, when they get their land deed, they not put that it located in a Hopkins for security of their land, the chain of title. They put City River, but sometimes our people are the ones who are quick to correct you and to say certain things. We have,
Sharon?
I've run off enough, no, but
Yeah.
I'm
No,
saying
but
that
what
with
I'm
respect to
we're running out of time, no?
the taking of people land and selling because of high bush or land tax. Mr. Brackett, you are one of the people who I remember came with a prospectus or something that you contributed to Belize. And I remember one election eve when other people were at election rally, I was with a lady 91, one 87, one about 80, another 70 odd year old, myself, a few younger than I. And we were listening till 3 a.m. And you were saying that we could do certain things for Belize, and the people who own land could actually get tax credits, and there would be the improvement of volume. And I like to say that in other countries, we have had big programs. I think the person I heard came the close to that was, God rest the dead, Dean the Elder, Dean Linder. He was looking to help people to secure their own location tickets. Remember, I said that that's a part and parcel of our history. And all these people in Belize City. And what they try to do for Belize City will catch the rest. When you secure we should be having security of tenure for people in Belize City. This is where our people can contribute, those who have the learning and the understanding and the exposure to what happened in other countries can do programs to help poor people, help the disenfranchised, help the people who are in the states who, by virtue of being tied down to their jobs and weightlifting for belief diplomatically, goodwill, economically, not just remittances, but really holding on to beliefs, right? Is that we could say to them, you are good citizens of Belize. This is your patria, a part of your patrimony. When we
Uh,
see a land on, let's
Sharon,
say,
Sharon,
what is the street behind Albert Street? You go one street parallel and the other. In other countries,
Sharon,
people boast.
hello.
We can bike or reach the sea coast in
Yeah.
5 minutes, or we can go by car in 2 minutes. Been there, done that. We could walk to the sea from one parallel street behind the seafront. Remember, seafront front street used to be foreshore and back street, Albert Street, right? Our
Eh,
hospital
Sharon,
was
Sharon,
on the
Sharon,
seafront, the old Belize City Hospital,
Sharon.
half
Um,
the cure to sickness. Thanks, Mr.
Sharon.
Chairman.
Uh, we,
Sorry, apologies.
Greg is the chairman for tonight, but I'm just trying to point out that we're running out of time as of right now, you know. And what I think Greg needs to do is allow us to do our uh, wrapping up.
Cut off your
Sorry,
mic
Greg.
there, Greg. Cut off your mic there for a little bit.
Um,
Yeah.
we need to just go ahead and do our wrap up, and so we don't close out too far beyond the limits, okay? Because we're running out of time right now. We have less than 9 minutes left, less than 8 minutes. So
Okay,
we got to do what we have to do with that time left, no?
I thank you, Miss Pitts, for that. I think we had a good open conversation tonight, very educational. But tonight, I want us to end our closing a bit differently. Gentlemen and Miss Pitts, state of emergency is gone. Are we looking at a new state of emergency for the 10th celebration? Because as we can see, the state of emergency was in place and we still have criminal activity. And even though it is over, just on the night, we had 4 shootings. So let me hear a quick closing from each of you on that. I go to you first, Mr. Wade.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure as always, to sit with you guys, and thank you, Miss Pitts, for very educational um, platform here tonight. In terms of the we see this plays out already, Greg, about the state of emergencies. It's finished and they go back and ask for more days and do it somewhere else, and we see that plays out. And I think that we will have another state of emergency pretty soon, because the crime and violence in the city continues. Right? I don't know how people can say that crime is down, and sadly enough, who says that is that people in high places, right, say these kinds of remarks, right, which is totally not true. I don't know why they do it, but they keep doing it. The crime and violence continue to plague this nation, not only Belize City, across the nation, but more so in Belize City. So, to me, that the state of emergency that they had, just was a waste of time. And others to come will be waste of time, because nobody seems to want to actually fix this problem. As a farmer police, farmer BDF, I think better could be done, right?
Definitely.
And no one seems to have the will. They're
That's
just
right.
putting on band-aids, fixes, and kicking the ball down the road for somebody else to come pick it up and kick it farther down the road. Need to stop, right? Because we're dealing with lives here, right? And we're dealing with innocent lives, children, women and children are being murdered innocently,
Mhm.
right? So, not you wanted for us to end that way, Gregory. I think that better could be done, and that's in my view as like I say, as a farmer law enforcement and farmer BDF. I know that better could be done. It's just that they don't have the will for whatever reason, right? I don't know, right? So, um, sad to see what's really happening in our country, right? And it seems that there is no fix, no end in sight. On that note, I want to, thank our viewers, both at home and abroad, our supporters who tune in and watch us. I hope that we shed some light and educate a little bit again once more. And say good night to you guys. Good night to our viewers, both at home and abroad. Glad
I
to be in
thank
your company.
I
Good night.
thank you, Mr. Wade. Now I go to you, Mr. Brackett.
Uh, as far as the question as to whether or not there will be another SOE, um, I'm not too sure. Based on previous trajectory, we should expect one. The bottom line is that the last one that just expired or they just stopped was done so recklessly and incorrectly, and we had to brought it to their attention. I think on 2 or 3 different shows in a row that it seemed like it doesn't bother them. It's not really a tool to solve the problem, and they all know it. But like you said, Mr. Wade, there's a lack of will, and the will is not just the will of veracity to be able to just do the right thing in the first place within the limits of the powers that are already entrusted in the government. But there's also a lack of goodwill, goodwill towards the rest of the members of the society who are actually victims of this crisis that we're experiencing in the country for far too long, too many decades in a row now. We have been enabling, playing with, and empowering this type of dastardly behavior and holding the rest of the society hostage, and then further victimizing them with these so-called SOE, which in many instances are not worth the paper they are written on. I heard Mr. Chester came out and made a statement to the effect that, well, the SOE did have a good effect. When you do something that is not right to be done, as an officer of the court, both as a police officer and a senior police officer at that, and as an officer of the court, as a lawyer at that, and you're going to violate people's right arbitrarily and capriciously by working with your Minister of Home Affairs and lead Minister of Police to basically trample on the rights of the rest of the society with an SOE, which is not something that should be taken lightly. When in fact you have the already vested power and authority as the lawman of the state to go and seek and or find and arrest anybody that is culpable for the crimes being committed, because the crimes are not being committed just by actions or activities falling out of the sky. It's being committed by human beings, by individuals who deserve to be arrested and prosecuted. And as far as I'm concerned, who some of their necks should be broken long time ago, and we wouldn't have. We probably have many of the other killings that's been going on for all these decades and unending. 100 and odd here, 100 and odd there. Every year you have so many dozens on top of dozens on top of dozens of people, including innocent victims that are being terrorized and being hurt. maimed and killed in some instances. And you will tell me the police department, as a department of the police for the whole country, doesn't have the fortitude or the gall or whatever it takes to go out and arrest people correctly, but they can find all the muscle necessary to go out and get people or try to arrest people, go in at people's house, knock down their door, broke up their place, grab people, beat them up with all kind of billy stick, while the soldiers then stand up with their long gun drawn and empower them, police officers, to be abusing people without people being tried. Go and arrest the people and put them on trial and send them back to jail if they have to, or whatever needs to happen to them. Get rid of them out of the society. They want to act like animals. They don't deserve to live in the middle of a decent, law-abiding citizens. They should not be given the preference to be terrorizing people, and then their rights are supreme to the rights of the average, basic, law-abiding civilians. But that's what's happening. And why? Because the police and the police minister and the rest of the government is not putting teeth in the process and making sure that they work on behalf of the public to get these knuckleheads convicted and dealt with adequately. The ones them that are sending out young kids to go and commit crimes on their behalf need to be dealt with as well. Most of them no go commit the crimes themselves. Most of the crimes that are being committed in Belize are not committed by the person that is aggrieved over the reason for them committing those crimes. Most of them are hired gunmen. They're sent out there by leaders of different groups or other people, or people who are going to pay other people to commit crimes on their behalf. Some of our politicians are in on the game as well, which is why they don't care much for the authority to get tough and deal with situation. Because some of the same one brothers and sisters and cousins and uncles and aunties and all of us as families there in the country going to be at the other end of the barrel of the gun. There the criminals could have their gun, whether legal or illegal, and go use it by innocent people or by some of their own colleagues, or use it against themselves. But we the civilians can't get a gun to defend for yourself. Hello? The guns then when they come in at the country, like I said before, they come in over and over and over. The ones then when they catch is just the few. And those few is because somebody squeal or somebody never get them pay. But so long as the right people are being paid, a lot of other weapons they come in at the country and have been coming in for a long time now. Belizean people don't make them one gun. All the guns that exist in our country have come from abroad, one way or the other. The authorities need to do their job and stop playing games. They need to arrest who they need to arrest, put through the ringers who they have to put through the ringers, and deal with the situation as tough as possible, because that's what it's going to take to be able to. Now, then they talk about, Salvador have SOE, or then deal with their gangs. Jamaica deal with their gangs. This I want. We are not Jamaica. We are not Salvador. We are Belize. But that no means that we not deserve any better than what we have right now. I've used up more than my fair amount of the time for the closing because we're part of the time, so I have to deal. But the government needs to start the job. Simple as that, as far as I'm concerned.
I thank you, Mr. Brackett. The way I look at it, I believe we have legislators to make law. We need to get rid of the draconian gun law and the enterprise law that are sending innocent people to jail. I asked the question before, who is policing the police? We have gun license being issued. There is no internal investigation in the police department. Who is going to jail for that?
Nobody.
That is aiding and abetting in crime. But nobody is policing the police. Just recently, there was a gun missing from the BDF camp, which was found and labeled as found property. How can that be when they knew it came from there? So now that is to me aiding and abetting because that gun did not just get to where it was at just like that. And how could you label a weapon that was missing from the BDF, imagine, or armed forces,
How did they end up in that
from,
lot, searching
from
that empty
property?
lot? How did they end up searching
You
that empty
know,
lot?
well, that's why I'm saying there's nobody policing the police. You know, no, Miss Spitz, I go to you for your closing.
Okay, I want to say quickly that with respect to Belize, I believe that we have made some serious blunders and we continue to bog down because we don't see as a country that we need to take charge of ourselves. And I'm saying
Unmute your
right
mic there a
now,
little
my
bit,
appealing
Greg,
to the
please.
people, take charge. The tonic that our people need is when you run out of answer, reach back into your culture. We have strayed and we have lost our way. What we had, and I know it's a modern thing happening, but still, make we go back to a Sunday school culture. Put back the fear of God, that's important as regular school. And I love the church school systems because that's the closest to a lot of children getting counseling and support, spiritual and so on, and even the mental. One last time I hear somebody mention spend day. Remember when children used to go and spend day at a godparent or their godparents or a responsible adult? Mentorship. I think a lot of business people and others, the cheapest thing is for them to give $100 or $500, but they will not contribute time for mentorship,
Mhm.
time from family. Too many parents, single and together, the TV, the babysit, then too busy with their own life.
Mhm.
The children, they not eat together. And a simple thing like saying grace before the meal, I believe that will help we be gracious and respectful. First thing in the morning, we pray. The UN rights of the child, foreign agenda. We took that hook, line, and sinker, and for we pick, they have the freedom of speech and corporal punishment. Not even the parents who discipline the children. So they've strayed the biblical,
We end up
spare
in
the
trouble
rod,
now.
just spoil the child. The other thing is, those who give weed, drugs, and do bad thing to picnic, beware the biblical admonition that it would be better that a yoke be placed around your neck. The other thing is, when we as a people and a country will get back into a little self-denial. When they time like this and state of emergency, instead of that, can we not have one leave period or if you're diabetic, maybe they're not fasting from food. If you like rum, stop drink rum for one day. Me will like sweet and dessert. Maybe I have to give up dessert for one day. Maybe if you like God a dance, you give up something.
Chairman,
And you
Gregory,
have to really get into a
could you acknowledge some of
time when there's a
the viewers?
communal
Could
thing.
you
You say
acknowledge some of the viewers
maybe
before we
from
close out?
Yes,
12 to
yes,
12 one
shortly.
day,
Uh-huh.
all away as a people one day, reflect on what we need to do. Um, Stop follow foreign agenda, funding agendas. We have our young men who, the late Mr. Adalbert Tucker said we have protected areas and endangered youth. I said a couple of weeks ago, it looked like we youth are dead from young age. You know, one time people dead from old age. And prayers and condolences to those who lose their children, their loved one, their fathers, the elders who, isn't it something that those who gave this country to us a certain way, while they're alive, they're seeing this happening to their children and grandchildren and neighbors' children. So I think what happened is that the sociology of it in the States and other places, you notice sometimes it is written into for people to qualify for housing, you have to be single mother, and if a man visit, that's our disqualification. Guess what? We need strong men to support, give a hug to a woman, and women cannot castrate our men.
Um,
With
Amen
all
to
our
that.
fractured
that's it.
families and so on,
That's it,
and
Greg.
then this foreign agenda about alternative lifestyle, that's population control.
Uh, Sharon,
And maybe
Okay,
we
uh,
must be more like our African countries and say, you know
Sharon,
what?
we have to put off
With
now.
all the problems, the
We have
women
to
have
put
to
off
prop
now.
up the men, and the men have to respect and look after the women. And
Sharon,
definitely our male children, especially from the youngest, they are at risk. And each of those children, each
Sharon,
child who is born must be. If you have the flour mill, have one sign up with so much days accident free.
Sharon,
What
Sharon,
about us with our children?
Sharon.
Sorry,
We
sorry.
will take up the subject on the next one, no? Because right now we're too far beyond the limit, you know, and so we got to close out. We'll take it up on the next agenda.
I thank each and every one of you for sitting virtually. At this time, before we close, I will turn it over to Mr. Brackett to acknowledge some viewers, and from there he
No,
can do the closing.
oh, you can do it. You can.
I'm not seeing them from where I'm at,
Oh, okay, okay. Let me
so just go ahead and then you can do the closing. You can
we
just sign
don't.
out.
Um, we have viewer here. Didn't say anything. Just left a heart, two pairs and a heart. Then we have Miss Rubina Forte saying good night to all and appreciation emoji. And then we have a Facebook user saying, "You guys are quite honored and blessed to have Miss Pitts seated among you as a panelist. Together, you will all do bigger and greater things with a heart." Thank you very much to all our viewers and supporters. And uh, thanks, Ms. Pitts. Thanks, Mr. Wade. Thanks, Greg, for participating in tonight's show. Uh, we could have gone a little longer, but that would have meant getting ourselves in a little problem, you know. And we're already like
Edgar says,
13 minutes beyond our limits.
Edgar says, always welcome, my brothers. We need
So,
current data on the communist government of China so we can relate to and compare how it affects our corrupt politician to
that
our lovely
agenda,
country, right? So
wrong agenda for Belize at this moment, but
yeah, so
we have to
we
take those up next time,
gonna
no?
stand
Because
by and
we're
watch.
taking off.
Thanks.
Good night,
Thank
God bless,
you.
and